Shalom and welcome to People on the Path. My name is Adam Lowy and I am the lifelong learning Moreh Derech at Congregation Beth Sholom in San Francisco. Each month I will welcome dynamic guests to learn, discuss, and consider what it means to be on the path. How does an individual's choices impact their path? How do the various communities that an individual participates in change their lives forever? What unsuspecting moments became the powerful ones that inform personal and professional journeys? Where does one's relationship to their Jewish identity take surprising turns, and how does it spiritually manifest? I intend for the conversation to be intimate, unscripted, and informal. The possibilities and potential will be infinite. The directions, ways, and paths will be explored, discovered, and open. Let us please take a walk together on this month's People on the Path. I would love to bring in our senior rabbi, Dan Ain, before our guest comes to join us. So, Rabbi Ain.
Howdy.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
Okay. Nice
Lots
day we're
going
having.
on.
Nice and sunny, huh?
It is, yes. It's, I'm definitely grateful in January that we are in this beautiful weather that we've been in
From
for
Detroit,
the
I
last
don't doubt
couple weeks.
that.
Huh?
I said from Detroit, I don't doubt that.
Right, exactly. And I'm aware of what's going on. My brother is in Chicago and gets really disappointed at me when I send him pictures that are sunny. Anyway,
I don't feel bad. I haven't
I
been
know,
long enough that I feel bad.
everyone makes decisions.
Yeah.
So, Rabbi,
Yes.
lots going on in the world for all of us, especially for the leader of a Jewish institution. How are you? How are you doing?
I'm okay. Thank you for asking. I think you ask good questions, Adam. I think there's a desire for people to really come together, especially after what happened in the synagogue in Texas, especially feeling for that community and for that rabbi and all the other communities that have been dealing with difficult issues. There's a desire to come back together, but it's hard. It's hard. And people have been ill. And, as you know, here, my son had COVID. So he's back at school today for the first time in 2 weeks. And we can go a little stir crazy when you're at home, and we just adore all the time that we have spent with our children and as the four of us for the past couple of years. But the sun is coming out, and I think that there's a desire, especially when something horrific, thank God, thank God nobody was killed by that terrorist, but I think there's a strong desire to want to come together to support and to pray, and we're doing our best to do that, whether it's gathering for Minyan every day online, whether it's getting together in person to the best of our abilities over Shabbat. There's just a lot of things, I was working on something for Sinai Memorial Chapel, and they're celebrating their 120th anniversary, and just thinking about how challenging these past 2 years have been to fulfill some of the most basic of Jewish rituals. And I think as a result of that, it's a little bit harder and it takes a little bit more effort to be a part of community. And that's going to be on us this next year to see if we can maybe take a little extra step towards the community, maybe volunteer, maybe just a little bit more, and give maybe just a little bit more this upcoming year, because it requires a little bit more of an effort. It's a lot like, we've been reading in the Torah portion, the Israelites make their way out of Egypt. They want to go back to Egypt, but no, you can't really go back. You still have to go forward. It's hard to go forward. It takes a lot of effort. And that's what our Torah teaches. And so that's where I am at the moment. I don't know if that was the most inspiring homily you've ever heard before, but I appreciate the question.
Yeah, I appreciate the answer. Not everything has to inspire. I mean, to hear that it's not always easy for you is validation for us. It's not easy. It's all hard. I just think we're trying our best, everybody. And yes, and no, Beth Sholom continues to innovate and find ways to bring us together. So
We've got no other choice. We've got
yeah.
to do that. And I mean, to credit to you, you started in the middle of this pandemic. This program was born out of the pandemic and our desire to get to know each other, right? We can't schmooze over tuna fish in the Corette for the kiddish just yet. Not yet. We can't do that and get to know that Joan is, or your guest, I shouldn't reveal, is an amazing writer and thinker. Like we don't get to learn about people. And we've had a lot of new members of our congregation, and what you've done is really you shine a great spotlight on the uniqueness and the diversity of our community and the people who find meaning in our sanctuary, even when it's hard to enter into that space. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for giving me the space, and thank you for directing me to today's guest. And I will bring you back in a bit, Rabbi Ain. So, without further ado, today's People on the Path guest is Joan Gelfand, poet, author, blogger, and book reviewer. Joan's debut novel, Extreme, was published to critical acclaim in 2020. Her book for writers, You Can Be a Winning Writer, is an Amazon #1 bestseller. In addition, Joan's publications include 3 widely reviewed poetry collections and an award-winning chapbook of short fiction. In her second career as a full-time author, Joan has taught for California poets in the schools, Poetry Out Loud, and currently for the Writing Salon. Her community work includes fiction editor for Zeke magazine, poetry editor for The J, and president of the Women's National Book Association, where she founded a national writing contest. Her 20 writing awards include the Cervena Barva Award for Fiction, Chapon Fiction Award, Best Fiction from the International Book Awards, Effie Lee Morris Poetry Award, and 3 Pushcart nominations. Featured on NPR, Tech Nation, Mosaic, KRON, ABC 10, KPFA, NBC Bay Area, KPIX, and WUSA. She is also a member of the National Book Critics Circle and blogged on culture and travel for the Huffington Post. An ardent student of dreams, Joan's poem, The Ferengeti School of Poetics, inspired by 3 dreams, was made into a short film and shown at 20 international film festivals, including Cannes, Rome, London, Austria, and Athens. The film won Best Poetry Film at the World Film Festival in Los Angeles and an honorable mention at the International Association for the Study of Dreams. Joan is a 20-year member of Congregation Beth Sholom and has written for the Shul newsletter and organized a multimedia arts day. She's a member of Makor Or, and Joan has studied with Rabbi Lew, Norman Fisher, and Rabbi Dorothy Richman. Joan, wow. Welcome to People on the Path.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. It's a lovely day, as you say. We're always grateful for the rain. I feel like God definitely sent us a blessing with some big storms, and we're all a little relieved this year. So yeah, and as Rabbi Ames said, our hearts are hurting for the thought of a congregation being held hostage is very visceral and very frightening. And yeah, so it's mixed. It's mixed.
Well, I'm really grateful that you've joined us today, and I'm looking forward to hearing about how you achieved so many incredible accolades, official, unofficial, and to me the thing that like popped out when I was reading your bio is that it says something about your second career, or that in your second career as a full-time author. We're gonna dig into lots of things, but what was your first career?
Well, let me also say I've been writing since I was 8 years old. So like that is a theme and a thread through my life. I just was never able to commit full time to it. My first career was in advertising and business and corporate sales, and all in San Francisco, and all very demanding and stressful, and disallowed me the chance to put my work out. I was writing, but there was a stretch there when I was working and raising my child that I wasn't able to get published because I didn't have the time to focus on that. So finally, I got the opportunity to work, be full-time as a writer, and I grabbed it.
And I think you have many followers who are grateful that you grabbed that opportunity.
I hope so.
People that love your work, and I want to, as you've learned, you said you did your homework. You've watched a few people on the past, so you've come to know that, of course, we want to hear about what you're doing now and what's coming. And I like to spend this time to kind of take a walk backwards, at least as far in a chronological sense, and dig into why you went from perhaps a career in advertising and sales, and yet you knew as an 8-year-old, as you began your writing career, that you never let go of that, and that you speak of this opportunity that presented itself. So let's figure out a little bit about how you got here, and I love to start with tell us a bit about what was life like for you growing up. Where did you grow up? What was your family like? Describe your parents a teeny bit for us, and yeah, just give us a little bit of a breakdown for Joan as a youngster.
I was born in Brooklyn, before Brooklyn was the hipster destination. When Brooklyn was, ladies walking down Flatbush Avenue with babies in prams. And my parents hightailed it in 1960s, early 1961, 62, something like that, to, out to Queens, lived there, went to the same high school as Simon and Garfunkel, and also the poet laureate of the United States, Stephen Dunn. Forest Hills High School was, it has a few creative types to call its own. And Adam, at 17, I left home. And I was a very, don't forget, I was being raised in the end of the 60s. I graduated high school in 72. So I hightailed it to Israel because identity was a big deal at that time. Who am I? What am I? Why am I here? And we had some classes that were offered to the high school students by kind of an alternative. Students from NYU would come and do kind of alternative teaching with some of the kids that were on college track. And I just decided that my identity was being a Jew. And I want to tell you one story before that, but let me continue on this trajectory. I signed up and I went to a kibbutz, and it was not just a kibbutz because I thought maybe I would emigrate. And so I went to an ulpan, and I was such a good Hebrew speaker that people thought I was a Sabra. And, I definitely loved that experience, but I'm going to say something maybe a little controversial here. What made me not want to commit to being an Israeli was that I felt that they were racist. And the way that played out for me was meeting some Moroccan Jews who told me how they were treated, and that they were secondhand citizens. And maybe, I guess, growing up in New York and having a father that prayed in a synagogue with Black Jews, I was awed and and I was, really aberrant to me. It was really, it was hard for me to understand how everyone who had come to Israel to build this country was not being treated equally. The European Jews were being treated one way, and the brown Jews were being treated another. And that kind of didn't work for me as a commit, to make that kind of commitment. But I do want to tell just one tiny story of growing up. I was very drawn to Judaism, and I was most close with my father. And my father, I always say he's very much like my husband, who just loves his Jewish life. He was not a member of a synagogue like we are, but he was a synagogue goer on high holidays. And when it came to Sukkot, he took me, and it was the first time, just me by myself, into the big sanctuary because you didn't need a ticket for Sukkot. And it was the first time I heard the Shema. And I'm about 8 years old, and I was hooked. My hair stood up, or as writers say now, there was a frisson. It was this electricity that I felt in the room that as a child, I had never experienced anything like that. And I'm like, ooh, something's going on here. This is really interesting. And so I was very close with my father around that. And I think that's where my Jewish life was born, in that synagogue on that day, because I saw that something you like to ask people is what pivotal events, what put you on the path?
Yeah.
Later on, I was intrigued with meditation. As I said, don't forget, I was being, my high school and college years were in the late 60s, early 70s. And, Suzuki Roshi had just come to the Bay Area. And so Zen meditation was on offer. In fact, that's how Rabbi Lew and Norman got into meditation, was that Suzuki Roshi was teaching Zen in Berkeley. And so I was drawn to that as well. So there were many years where I was like, oh, I'm Jewish in my heart and in my soul, but I'm really drawn to this meditation practice. And when I met Rabbi Lew, I was like, I can't believe this. My star, has risen, because I have found someone who is speaking the same language and wants the same things out of their spiritual life. And of course, the fact that he was a writer was really awesome to me. And we became very, very close. My husband and I studied with him and Norman for the whole 10 years that Rabbi Lew was in Makor Or. It was a big, big loss. In fact, this last memorial that we had on Sunday was really moving to most of us from Makor Or. It was really, really right, spot on.
Yeah. Joan, there's a lot there. Let's slow it down here for a minute. And I need to ask you some questions about some of the things you just said. Okay, so 8 years old, your father takes you in to the sanctuary, but he's not a member, but you said that he prays with Black Jews. Where was that happening, and where was that? Who was he praying with? What was the name of that institution? And was it the same place he took you in when you had that moment that was pivotal?
Good clarification. I apologize. He would go in the Lower East Side. There was a synagogue. I almost want to say the Eldridge Street Synagogue, which I have visited, which has been renovated way down in the Lower East Side. I'm not 100% sure. So if you want to fact check me, I might be wrong on that. But he would do that during the week. His home synagogue was in Brooklyn, in where we lived around Flatbush. And I can't remember the name of the synagogue, but he would go on holidays. And for him, Sukkot, as for all of us, is a big Jewish holiday, but less people show up, so he could bring his kid,
So between 8 and 17, when you went to Israel, how was Jewish living in your house at that point, or at least for you? I mean, you said at 8, you're like, something, there's some electricity here, so what were you doing between 8 and 17, and how did you get to Israel specifically as a way to, how did that manifest into like deciding to go to the land of Israel?
This is a little bit more loaded question than you might want. My thought, well, it gets a little tragic. My father ended up passing away when I was 11. And so our Jewish life kind of ground a bit to a halt, except for family celebrations, Passover, Hanukkah with our family. My mother was not a shul goer. She was not a Shabbos candle lighter. She was Jewish, but she didn't practice that way. So I think in a lot of ways, as I got older and got over the initial trauma of losing my favorite parent, my Jewish life felt like a big connection to my father, and it still does. It still does. It's a way to honor his legacy. And one thing that's been especially beautiful at Beth Sholom is that there was no place where I would go for my yurt site. And now I have a place where I go every year, and I have his yurt site. And I'm the only one in my family who says it. So it's an honor, and also, really sweet to be able to do that.
Thank you for sharing that.
But you know what they say, all writers have suffered. So, as people say to me, you lost your father, but you probably would never have been a writer if it wasn't for that, especially poets, So it kind of it's all right. It's okay.
So how did your writing, kind of evolve and grow in those years as well? You said you started writing at 8, and I'd imagine that writing became a pretty necessary practice of yours around the passing of your father and beyond. Tell us a little bit how that practice grew. Was it supported? Did you have a community of poet writers around you before you headed to Israel? And then I want to know how you got to the Bay Area, because you said you got here, but we didn't figure out how yet.
Between 8 and 17, I can't say that I was able to own being a writer. Basically, I had the distinction of reading the most books in my class at school and writing the most book reports. And that was about as far as it went. I didn't have a creative writing teacher in high school. It really wasn't until after Israel, where I was writing a lot. I came to California for a 3-month visit and ended up staying my whole life. And part of it was because I got involved in a community of poets, writers, musicians, artists who incredibly supported and encouraged me. And that's where my career really took off, when I, post Israel, and then I came here and went to college here.
And when you got here, and you kind of, I would say, dove into this community of writers and artists and poets, and that was what this was in 72, 73.
Yeah, early 70s. Yeah.
So there was probably a lot of creativity and exploration happening all over. Were you seeking out Jewish, or did you have a Jewish practice at that stage? Let's just start with that one.
That is a time that for me, it was very, between that time when I first arrived, let's say I was 18, and the time I, for about 10 years, was very catch as catch can, meaning a bunch of us would pull a Seder together, or we would do Hanukkah, or, I wasn't associated with a synagogue at all. And then when I had my child, when I was early 30s, I joined Kehila and started to practice more devotedly and more regularly. Then when Adam and I were married, met Rabbi Lew, then we got involved with Beth Sholom. So this is the most committed we've been.
And I want to explore a teeny bit about, obviously your father was again, is still your connection in a lot of ways to Judaism. Would you say that he was very clear in connection to specific values, like Jewish values, that you also kind of take with you each day as you wake up, and also maybe even into your writing? How has your Jewish connection and experience found its way into your writing?
That is a really wonderful question. Um, you know, if you love a parent deeply, their values become your values because you respect and honor them. My father was always involved in the community. I think that's why and how I got involved in the Women's National Book Association, sat on the board for 14 years. He was a very generous, kind, and also just his devotional practice of the holidays rolled around. It didn't matter if it was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we honored the holidays. As far as my writing, my Jewish life didn't really start to come into my writing really until the meditation practice. So I'd say the last 20 years. Yeah.
And so tell us give us the details of the meeting with Rabbi Lew the first time. How did that come to be, and were you a regular in his meditation, I think, mornings that we're meeting, as far as my understanding goes, and how that was such a vibrant part of Beth Sholom for a good period. Can you tell us a little bit about that, when you first met him, and how you just knew that was the place, that was a collision of amazing things, and here it was in living.
Totally. Well, as you know, many pivotal moments in our lives come from people that we meet. I had just gotten together with Adam, and one of his colleagues knew the cantor at Beth Sholom. And so we were looking for someone to marry us. So we start coming around to Beth Sholom. The next thing we know, we get a flyer. We're starting a Jewish meditation practice. And Adam had also had a meditation practice. And it was no question. We were like, oh my God, this has our name on it. In fact, we moved to San Francisco. We were living in different parts of the Bay. I was in Berkeley and he was in Palo Alto. And when we decided we were going to live together, we said, well, we'll live in San Francisco so we can be close to the shul and close to Rabbi Lew. And we were in the intensives. We were in many intensives, a couple of times a year. There would be about 2 or 3 month intensives where we were meditating almost every day at 6 o'clock in the morning with Rabbi Lew and or Norman, who would schlep in from Marin, poor Norman. And then we had classes with Rabbi Lew and retreats and Shabbat retreats and week-long retreats. And we were just a group of people that just adored each other. I mean, some of our closest friends are still from that group. And it was kind of a magical time. We felt like we had a mentor and a teacher and a parent and a guide. And it was just amazing. Really wonderful. Yeah, he was really pivotal to us. Yeah.
So I often ask the question about who was your greatest teacher and why, but I think that you've answered that question. Do you consider yourself a leader?
I think after being president of a national writing organization, I stepped into those shoes. Yeah, definitely. I saw that I had the ability to lead and to change. Yeah, that was someplace where I really expressed that.
And you've influenced, I would say, thousands and thousands of people with some of your books. I mean, some directly. How to Be a Winning Writer, I would say, is probably a more direct influence, and not to mention your prose of all types, I'm sure has influenced and led people onto lots of pivotal moments in their own paths. So can you tell me a little bit about as a successful writer, how has your leadership kind of officially been asked to be shared, and how do you find yourself supporting and continuing to coach and support other up and coming writers and people that also want to find that opportunity to get that moment of publication where here it comes all of a sudden.
Let's see. That was a long question, Adam. I'm trying to go back to the beginning. You can be a winning writer. One of the things that differentiates this book, I'll tell you the whole title. You can be a winning writer, the 4 C's of successful authors: craft, commitment, community, and confidence. And what happened to me is that, I got my BA in creative writing, I got a master's in creative writing, and I still wasn't quite getting where I wanted to be. And so I just started to study what's going on here. What did Michael Chapon do? What did all these authors that I love and admire, how did they get there? And I kind of figured a few things out. And I pitched this book to Mango Press, and they were the first publisher I pitched it to, took it. But this idea of community was really important to me, and it's not something that a lot of writing teachers talk about. And it's a lot about, it's what we do at Beth Sholom, right? It's giving and taking, giving and taking. And so when I came onto the literary scene, I was so out there in the Women's National Book Association that when people thought, oh, we want to have someone come and speak. Oh, Joan, come and speak. Oh, Joan, she's a poet. Oh, we've heard her read. Oh, come here. And it was unbelievable in terms of the things that I was engaged in that I would not have been had I not been active in the community. And of course, it's the same thing with Beth Sholom. We make connections, we expand our intellectual life and often our professional lives. At this moment, I don't coach writers one-to-one, but what I do is I teach classes. So the writing salon 2 or 3 times a year will have a class, and I'll teach from my book. And, it's really a complex process for a lot of writers, how they go from being an aspiring writer to a published author. Some people get there very quickly, and some have very circuitous paths. And I would say my path was fairly circuitous and back and forth and up and down. Now, after 20 years, I'd say I'm on a fairly solid footing, but that took a long time.
Did you ever have a sense that your poetry would turn into film?
That was a big surprise to me. As you said in my introduction, I'm a very committed dreamer. So when I have a dream, I write it down, even if I don't understand it. And so I had these 3 dreams about Lawrence Ferlinghetti. I had no idea where they came from. I just wrote them down. And then after the 3rd one, I said to myself, something's going on here. Somebody wants to speak to you. And I crafted it into this poem. The poem has been published like 15 times in like anthologies and journals, and people would have written to me that, can I publish that? And so I'm on the radio one morning with a colleague of mine who is a dream expert, and her husband is a songwriter and an ex-rock musician. And he heard the poem and he goes, oh my God, we have to do a film. and he happens to be a filmmaker. So he took the poem and I went to LA and we filmed it, and I was horrified at the idea of being in the film. I said, come on, don't you want some 20 something in this film, some babe? And he's like, no, Joan, you're going to be in this film. And he happened to have a little studio in LA, and we did it. And I thought, okay, well, great, if it goes up on YouTube. And then I started to submit it to film festivals. And as Lawrence Ferlinghetti was hitting his 100th birthday, you know, he died about a year and a half after his 100th birthday, but he made it to his 100th birthday. I just was like, acceptance, acceptance, acceptance. And it ran in these 20 international film festivals. So it's really exciting. And they didn't pay for me to go to Cannes. You know, I'm a poet with a short film, but it was awesome to see the film get that kind of exposure. Yeah, and it was really fun to record it. One scene we recorded in LA at this really famous place for poets called, you know, I'm blanking. I have to remember. I'll remember it at some point. But it's in Venice, and it's a place where a lot of, you know, poets have read. So we filmed a scene there with a live audience. So it was super fun. But in fact, oh yeah, I could read that poem. I could read another poem if you want at the end of the interview. But that was exciting. And we have made other poetry films after that. And some of them have gotten some good traction. As I always tell writers, you try this, you try this, you try this. You just got to keep moving and see what gets attention and traction, if that's what you want. I made a film was made of a poem I wrote about San Francisco, and it's gotten almost as many views as the Ferlinghetti one. So you never know what's going to strike people.
That's awesome. And how are you kind of getting your fill of art and media in kind of the confines of pandemic? I know in part of your bio you wrote that you had created a multimedia day at Beth Sholom at some point, and you know, I just, you know, obviously you're somebody who is fueled by relationships to artists and by collaboration and creativity of others. And so how have you been able to maintain that during many of the restrictions that we've been facing over the last couple of years?
Well, the truth is I'm kind of a loner. And having my husband home, who had traveled for 10 years for work, we were like happy as clams to be shut down, because every time I turned around, he was on a plane. So I was very happy to be home with Adam for a couple of years. And my writing really did well. What was an incredible challenge is that my novel came out in the middle of COVID, but I had to get it out. It had been ready to come out for over a year. And launching a book in COVID, every author says, was a horror story, because you could do events online, but it didn't translate into people coming up to the author, shaking your hand, you sign the book, and they buy it. So that was kind of awkward. But the poetry scene right now, and the literary scene in general, is kind of sitting back and reassessing and saying, this Zoom thing is kind of exciting, because even though we don't think we're going to sell the number of books that we might at a live reading, we can also invite people from all over the world. It's like Norman's group, Everyday Zen. When the pandemic hit and these meditation groups went online, there are now people on the meditation calls coming in from Europe and all over the country. And so, you know, Zoom has been a real double-edged sword for a lot of us.
Mm-hmm.
We miss our friends, and we miss the organic and the chemistry of interacting. We love that. And on the other hand, it's kind of expanded a lot of people's audience.
Mm.
So, and there's been no shortage of literary events and readings online, both for me to be present in and to support and to listen to my fellow, and also teachings, classes have gone online. So that's, for us, it's been kind of cool. Yeah, I mean, it's been fine.
Yeah. Good, thank you. I know Rabbi Ain is ready. I don't know how much of your story he's heard before or if ever. So Rabbi Ain, let's pull you in here.
Sure. Yeah. No, I've got questions. I'm interested. My questions. So, Joan, just so you know, I only ask questions that are for my own personal benefit. So, the question that I have for you is, well, Adam is a tech person, and you are a poet and an artist. Okay. And you teach how to write. And I'm wondering, in the Bay Area, in your experience working with people, how to write, how to express themselves artistically, what is lost perhaps in the translation between the left brain and the right brain? Like, I'll give you an example just from my own experience. I think back when we had services and people would come, I would give a sermon, and I would often give sermons that were, I don't know, loosely connected. I wanted the listener to create those connections. It wasn't going to be A plus B plus C equals D. But some people are fashioning their mind in a linear fashion. So I guess my question to you is, how do you teach artistry, non-linear approaches to people who are very linearly set, and in reverse, how do you teach that linear organizational thinking to people who have a hard time putting pen to paper?
First, let me back up a little bit. What I've been teaching for the last, I'd say 5 or 7 years since I left California Poets in the schools and I was teaching children, which is a whole different other story. Right now, what I'm focused on is teaching writers how to get published. There's so many other teachers teaching writing that I kind of have shied away from that, because not a lot of people are doing what I'm doing. So I've kind of found my niche, helping people who actually have the manuscript. They've been to the classes, they have a master's degree, or they've been taking lay classes for many years. Then they're like, now what do I do? So that's my specialty, is the business part. You see, that's where my background, my sales.
There you go. Well, now you're using the business stuff to help out the artists. Absolutely. Who have a hard time. They've got a great book of poems, but the idea of turning that into something that can be on the market is going to be as impossible as it might be for, me to sit down and write a really clever poem. So it could be something like that, but talk about the reverse of it. Do you feel like this is, tell me about artistry here in the Bay Area and sort of the clash with technology. Is that something you feel? Is that something you notice in terms of your work?
Well, I've been around a long, long time. And so, there are artists in the Bay Area that are really anti-tech. So I feel like I'm kind of an ambassador to say to people, do you realize that how much that tech has actually given us somewhat of a renaissance here in the Bay? Do you know how many people like me are able to do their art full time because they have a tech spouse? I mean, Adam comes home all the time and says, oh, my colleague at work, his wife is a published writer. Oh, this one is a poet. Oh, this one. And I really want people to see that underside that, well, first of all, in Extreme, in my novel, one of the reasons I was inspired was that when I met Adam, what blew my mind was that I was an English major who never knew a geek. And so I'm thinking, they're like, okay, he reads literary fiction, plays classical piano, is a total Renaissance guy. And all his friends were musicians, artists, graphic designers. I mean, of course, he attracted that because he loves the arts. But I felt like I had to write this book to show people there's another side to Silicon Valley that's where the people are very rich intellectually and artistically. And I feel like I succeeded in doing that in the book.
And I love that. And I know back, I don't, Adam's career, Adam is involved in technology for a long time. And back in, I think back to the early years of tech, it was full of a flowering of artistry and creativity and just, this is how you got to know writers and how you got to hear music that you would otherwise never have been exposed to in that way. And so I love that. And one of the things that I really like about your story and sort of your work is that we can't move forward if there's this either or dynamic here. It's just not going to fly. And so how do we find a way to get out of that dynamic where we stop sort of painting broad strokes and begin to see the ways in which artistry can inform technology and technology can inform artistry? Yeah. Tell me about Alan Lew, Rabbi Lew of blessed memory for a second. You talked about this. We just had a wonderful event, which was just magnificent as part of our centennial to celebrate Rabbi Lew. And what back to our conversation about technology and about artistry and about sort of the high functioning nature of the people who live here in San Francisco, this idea of turning it off seems so counterintuitive that it must have been such a beacon to people. Can you share, you already have, but I guess just share just how it felt to be in that space. I think for me, who didn't have the privilege of knowing Rabbi Lew and who got here, I always felt like I was born after Woodstock, right? I was always late to the party, right? So that's, like for who didn't actually get to experience that, I think it's important for people like you to share that so that we can hear that those feelings are possible in the context of a sanctuary. So what did that, just if you can give us a sense in your own poetic way to describe the feelings of being in that space. And then thank you for coming.
I think, a lot of tech people showed up in the beginning. And I remember one Russian guy saying to Adam, all I do when I sit in meditation is try to figure out my coding problems. But, so there was definitely that side of people that were like, they couldn't slow down enough. They couldn't come down to that being present level. But he was such an inspiration because he was a poet and he cared about Torah, of course, but he also cared about, just connections. And he would always talk about the gematria. I mean, it was magical. It was magical. And he had such a great sense of humor that he, brought people to him. And of course, as people said in the memorial, he was so charismatic and so warm. It was really magical. We were all just so intellectually, spiritually, and emotionally stimulated. It was really amazing. And it was a loss. You have a teacher like that. But Rabbi Ain, we are committed to you.
Are you kidding me? I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry I couldn't have experienced that. And thank you for sharing it with us. And
we met him when he was already in his 60s, late 50s. He was quite a mature, learned, he'd been around. And also that combination of it was so real to watch someone who had committed themselves to Zen to the point when he was going to become an abbot, a priest, and just taking that last turn and just saying, I'm going back. And that was just so real and especially all of us hippies who grew up in the 60s and 70s and just said, oh, wow, that's it. And he made Judaism so relevant. Mm. it was beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, his social justice. Yeah. Anyway, I think I've answered that question.
Yeah, no, thank you. And that's, it's the influence that he had on your path. I think we are blessed to learn from him, from you, and to have you part of our community and to continue to share in your simchas and in your joys. So thank you for coming and participating. I'm going to let Adam go into the speed round now. I look forward to seeing you soon, Joan. Very
Thank
soon.
you.
We'll get together.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi Ain. Joan, as Rabbi Ain said, the speed round of questions is upon us. However, I would love to take you up on a poetry reading. It's your floor. Give us a poem. I'd love to hear it, and then we'll go to the speed round of questions.
So this is a poem that I read when we had our multimedia day. And by the way, I would be more than happy to help do that again. We brought in musicians and we had an art show of people who did crafts and painting and jewelry. And then we had a reading of the writers in the community. And it was just a beautiful afternoon. We had the shul supported us, we had help, we had food. It was really, really nice. But I read this poem, and this is called Daddy-O. And it was inspired by Cannonball Adderley, because I'm also a big jazz fan.
Oh, good.
Mr. Detroit. So yes, I wrote this on a plane listening to Cannonball Adderley. Okay, Daddy-O. Uptown. Lex and 67th, the corner luncheonette, 1940s decor. I'm sipping an egg cream, fizzy sweetness, afternoon half-light, back on that swiveling stool, enveloped in your presence. You were so big and talking, always talking. Your legacy, a love of food and strangers. Your headstone is a mess, Daddy-O. Downtown. It was you who led me by my small hand, handing me the midnight blue Tallis bag with silver lettering like moonlight on a lake. There was magic in that bag, I'm sure of it. 3, all around the town. Daddy-O, the FDR still stinks, the traffic would drive you mad, and all your friends are dead. But the days still grow dusky, and in the space between day and night, romance and expectation loiter. Daddy-O, on these streets, you're that note, that ancient music, that upbeat jazz chord wrapping itself wordless around my heart. I come to this city and feel you in the cracks of the pavement, the closeness of the brick, the cool sky, the unceasing noise, and the dirty river flowing by. The city is etched on my memory like some noir film blanketed with dark, unresolved mysteries. I'll always remember the night we lay in the dark, crickets the only sound beside your voice as you regaled us with tales of pushing your Kanish cart on the beach at Coney Island. Daddy-O, years pass and I can't seem to get to you. In this city, I pay my respects to your memory, to your joy. In this city, Daddy-O, you are still alive.
Woo! Wow.
That's
Joan,
good.
more. We need more. Yes. Okay. So the multimedia day, check. Rabbi Ain, check. Make a note of that. Multimedia day is happening again. I did not know of such a history, and yes, we need you to
Check.
read. We need you to read many of your poems. Wow. Thank you. I thought I knew what you were getting into, and then you took me somewhere totally different.
Oh.
So thank you, and that brings us to the speed round of questions, and I'm going to start with the first one, just because you mentioned jazz, and we didn't really talk about music much, but I would love to just ask you first, if you could only take one jazz album with you on the path, one jazz album with you, what jazz album would it be? And if you would like a little bit more space, I think you'll get this. You could also give me, a 90-minute tape with 2 albums, one on each side, 45 minutes. So, I had plenty of tapes in my younger days with important music. So, jazz album.
Well, my two favorite jazz musicians at the moment are Bill Evans and Joshua Redman. So I would take anything by either one of them.
Amazing. I just love that you said Bill Evans. My my son somehow, he likes to have music looped as he sleeps all night, and the music player that we have in his room is my iPod. So this is from 15 years ago, and right now he's on just the loop of Bill Evans. Like every night, I'm not kidding. Every night he listens to like 12 Bill Evans albums, and like I wonder like right while he sleeps.
Wow.
And I just wonder, like, at one
one
point,
day and
at one point, he's just gonna like, as some teen or college kid, he's just gonna be sitting there and just be like, "Huh, these all sound very familiar to me." Love it.
oh,
Love Bill Evans. Thank you for that. All right, what do you think are the 5 necessities that you must have with you on the path?
wow. Besides my husband?
Yes, yes. I mean, we kind of assume those incredible people in your life will somehow be on that path. So yeah, more other things.
My legal pads and pens, my meditation cushion, my meditation bowl to ring the bell, hiking shoes, and a hat.
Nice. Awesome. And Joan, what's your favorite Jewish holiday?
Oh, that's sweet. I have to say Rosh Hashanah because I was born on Rosh Hashanah. It really is my favorite.
Beautiful. And if you could walk the path with any person, they could be living, they could be past, they could be somebody who's gonna in their future self. Who would you like to walk the path with right now?
Oh God, that is really hard. That is almost a stumper. It would have to
Who
be,
popped in? Give us like who was the first image of somebody?
it might be Michael Chapon. I'm such in awe of him as a brain and a writer and a thinker and a compassionate social justice worker and a father. And yeah, I'm a huge fan of his.
Have you spent time with him ever?
No, no, I'm kind of like 3 degrees of separation. I know his wife is in some networking groups that I'm in. Yeah,
Yeah, because he's not far. He's just across the bay.
he is. I've seen him at the Claremont Country Club with his kids, and I was in Kehila when he was on the board of Kehila.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, we crossed paths, but
Excellent. Yeah, wonderful person. Very creative, and I think a lovely representative of the Bay Area. I think.
and a Yiddishkeit.
Yeah.
He's really put it together.
Yeah, and he's merged some of that Yiddishkeit into his work for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and this seems like an important question to ask you. What's the latest great book you've read that you would like to share with us?
2. Can I say 2?
Please, as many as you want.
One is a fast read. It's called The Plot. And it's just so brilliant because it's how a writer kind of steals a story, but it's just so fun. And the other one is Matrix by Lauren Groff, because it tells a story that I was not familiar with, of 12th century nuns and Eleanor of Aquitaine. And it's just an incredible historical fiction. Not it's about 500-600. It's huge, but it's a real page turner. Amazing character development, and how hard it is to bring the 12th century to life. It's one thing to bring a dream or what's going on today, but to bring the 12th century to people who want to read about it, that's amazing.
And what was her last name? How did you spell her last name?
Lauren Groff, Groff, Groff. She's
Okay.
also she's written about 6 novels, but I think this is her tour de force. Yeah.
Fantastic. And my final question, Joan, what do you see ahead of you on the path?
Well, I currently have a new literary agent who this week is pitching my new book, which is a look at this period of time in Berkeley in the 70s, where I landed with all these musicians and artists and poets and filmmakers. And it's called Home Run, The Berkeley Revolution. And she's identified about 20 top publishers. So fingers crossed, that will be my future baby.
Exciting. Does it have a name yet that you have in mind for it? I know that writers have to negotiate the names of their books at some point in the process. What is the name? If it went out today, what would it be called?
So our working title is Home Run, and the subtitle is The Berkeley Revolution. So we'll see if that flies, or if the publisher wants to change it. I used to care about things like this, but as I've gotten older, it's like, you're the publisher, do whatever you want. I'm not fighting. Yeah.
Beautiful. That's an excellent last lesson for us. Fight the right fight. Joan, anything else you'd like to share?
I do want to say something. In this last spring, I had surgery for the first time. I'd never had surgery. And when I was about to go into surgery, I had so much support on a spiritual level. I had a Tibetan monk praying for me. I had people who ran healing circles. I had Rabbi Ain. And then I had a dream that these Aborigines came to me. They were shamans. And I woke up and I was sure that they were there to protect me. And I sailed through that surgery. I mean, my daughter was married 7 weeks after my surgery in Germany, and I showed up at the wedding in perfect form. So I feel that the spiritual path is long, and it is really not easy for people who want instant gratification to parse or understand or commit to. And the truth is that I felt this year that there really was, and I don't want to be so commercial about it, but there almost felt like there was a payoff for all of these 20 years of commitment and connection and community. Yeah, I was just blown away. Yeah. So I guess I'd say that even though it seems long and unsatisfying at times, there are pivotal moments when it kind of all comes together and you feel like, if I hadn't done this, then this wouldn't have happened.
Amen. Thank you for sharing that Torah with us to end our time with you. What a treat. Joan, I don't think we've ever met in person. I really hope to some point sooner than later. And I am certainly going to reach out about a day of creativity and arts and culture at Beth Sholom. Let's do that again. What an honor. Thanks so much for joining me on the path and Rabbi Ain today. I'm just going to take us out with my closing. And if you want to stick around for a second, that would be great after we stop record. People on the Path is shared on the last Wednesday of each month. February's edition will be shared on Wednesday, February 23rd. I'm always looking for potential guests, so if you are listening and have someone in mind, please email me and let me know. I'd love to hear who you think should be on the path with us. Thanks everyone for joining. I hope this conversation has been valuable and will support your efforts to find your footing and balance as you continue to navigate and blaze your path. One step at a time, I encourage you to walk your path with courage, wonder, curiosity, and an open mind, body, and spirit, like our guest Joan has done and will continue to do. I wish everybody a shalom and a nisya tova, safe travels.